Imagine running tirelessly for years, suffering to build a higher existence in a brand new SUV. Handy is to have it all ripped away in an unmarried second of brutal violence. This is the tragic tale of Yao Pan Ma, an elderly immigrant who left his place of origin for the promise of a brighter future in America. He became a person of resilience, a tough worker who refused to give up, even when existence driven him to the edge. But in April 2021, an unprovoked and cruel attack in East Harlem turned his American dream into a scary nightmare. What led to this assault? Who changed into at the back of it? And why did it send shockwaves throughout the country, sparking outrage and fear amongst Asian American communities? Stay with us as we discover the chilling details of this situation, a case that exposed a dark and unsettling truth about growing hate crimes inside the United States. Like millions before him, Yao Pan Ma got here to America with wish in his heart and goals in his eyes. He and his wife, Bao Chen, immigrated from China in search of better opportunities and a future full of possibilities. They left in the back of their domestic, their beyond, and the entirety they knew, believing that in the land of opportunity, difficult work might pay off. For years, Ma labored tirelessly as a dishwasher in New York City's bustling eating place enterprise. It wasn't glamorous paintings, but it changed into sincere, and it helped put meals at the table. His wife took on various extraordinary jobs, and collectively, they constructed a modest lifestyles for themselves. Then got here the COVID-19 pandemic. As businesses shut down, restaurants struggled to stay afloat, and Ma located himself most of the hundreds of workers all of a sudden unemployed. He became in his 60s, too antique to start over easily, too younger to retire. But he didn't permit depression take over. With no process and no steady earnings, Ma turned to something many struggling immigrants resorted to: gathering cans and bottles from the streets to earn a few dollars. Every day he pushed his cart through the streets of East Harlem, choosing up recyclables, doing what he may want to make ends meet. It turned into backbreaking paintings, but he did it with quiet dignity. Until, one fateful evening, he encountered the sort of cruelty nobody have to ever want to face. April 23, 2021, started out like any other day for Ma. He left his home, cart in hand, prepared to spend the evening gathering recyclables. The streets were quiet, the city nevertheless convalescing from the consequences of the pandemic. Then, at around 8:30 p.m., the entirety modified. A man walked up behind him, no caution, no words exchanged. And then, in an on-the-spot, may become violently shoved to the floor. Before he ought to even react, the attacker stomped on his head, again, and again, and again. The pressure became brutal, relentless. Surveillance photos captured the scary moment. An innocent aged guy being beaten into unconsciousness, his frame crumpling below the savage attack. Pedestrians iced up in horror, some screamed. Others rushed to call 911. But for Ma, it was already too overdue. He lay there, immobile, bleeding, his skull fractured. By the time first responders arrived, he became barely clinging to life. He changed into without delay rushed to the clinic, where docs did the entirety they made to store him. But the injuries were catastrophic. He had suffered a disturbing brain injury, more than one skull fractures, and intense facial wounds. His frame changed into failing, slipping into a coma. For months, his spouse Bao Chen sat by his clinic bed, refusing to give up wish. She held his hand, prayed for a miracle, and waited for the day he could open his eyes once more. But that day never got here. After 8 agonizing months, Yao Pan Ma exceeded away on December 31, 2021. His goals, his struggles, his combat for a better lifestyles, all ended in a moment of senseless violence. Who ought to commit this type of brutal act against a helpless aged man, and why? Authorities fast identified and arrested 49 to 12 months vintage Jarrod Powell. He had a records of violence in more than one earlier arrests, along with for assault. But what made this attack even more chilling became the belief that it wasn't random. It changed into a hate crime. As Powell sat in custody, the research found out annoying proof. Surveillance photos from days before the assault confirmed Powell assaulting any other elderly Asian man, though the sufferer survived. This wasn't an isolated act of violence. It became a part of a sample. The assault on Yao Pan Ma didn't manifest in isolation. It changed into part of a terrifying surge in anti-Asian hate crimes across America, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic. Between 2020 and 2021, hate crimes against Asian Americans spiked via a magnificent 339%. In primary cities like New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, Asian elders had been being targeted in huge sunlight hours, shoved onto subway tracks, punched, kicked, even killed. Why? Much of this violence turned into fueled with the aid of racist rhetoric surrounding the pandemic. The virus was falsely blamed on Asian communities, and that out-of-place anger changed into actual world violence. For many, Mes had become an image of this disaster, a warning call that something needed to trade earlier than extra harmless lives were lost. After Mes' demise, the Asian American community erupted in anger and grief. Vigils have been held in his memory. Protesters took to the streets, and social media campaigns demanded justice. His spouse, Bao Chen, spoke out tearfully. He became an excellent man. He worked hard. He by no means hurt every person. Why did this happen? Her pain changed into shared by thousands across the U.S. People demanded harsher punishments for hate crimes, better protection for elderly Asians, and actual movement from lawmakers. The town of New York spoke back via increasing police presence in Asian groups and launching initiatives to combat hate crimes. But for plenty, it was too little, too past due. The harm was already accomplished. In 2023, Jarrod Powell confronted trial for the murder of Yao Pan Ma. The evidence in opposition to him was overwhelming: surveillance photos, past assaults, witness memories. He, in the long run, pleaded guilty to manslaughter as a hate crime and was sentenced to 22 years in prison. For Ma's circle of relatives, it turned into a small measure of justice, but no punishment should undo the pain they had continued. No sentence may want to carry him back. His wife had lost her husband. His network had misplaced a hardworking member, and America had misplaced but every other innocent life to hate. The tale of Yao Pan Ma isn't always pretty much one guy. It's approximately a network below attack and a nation suffering to confront its demons. Since his death, advocacy businesses have continued combating for more potent protections for Asian Americans. Awareness campaigns have advised people to stand up against hate, document assaults, and educate others. But the question stays: how many more lives should be misplaced before actual trade happens? For Bao Chen, lifestyles could in no way be the same once more. The man she had spent many years with, the associate she had struggled alongside to construct a better destiny, become long past. In interviews, she said the insufferable loneliness that followed. She should not hear his voice, share meals with him, or see him return domestic after an extended day. Every corner in their small home reminded her of him: the footwear he left through the door, the coat he used to put on, the quiet moments they once shared. Her grief turned into compounded by means of fear. Even after Powell's sentencing, she, like many other Asian Americans, persisted to live with the anxiety that any such tragedy ought to take place again. She avoided strolling alone, flinched at unexpected noises, and concerned for the safety of others in her community. No one must live in fear due to their race, however that become the fact she and such a lot of others faced. The dying of Yao Pan Ma serves as a harrowing reminder of the dangers of unchecked hate. While awareness has grown, the combat against racial violence is far from over. Every new assault, each new sufferer, raises the same painful query: will this ever stop? The answer lies now not just in legal guidelines and regulations, but in how groups respond. Speaking up against injustice, assisting victims, and fostering know-how among extraordinary racial and ethnic agencies. These are the genuine guns against hate. Until society as a whole recognizes the urgency of this crisis, tragedies like Ma's will preserve to manifest. But if we pick to behave, if we refuse to allow hate win, we are able to honor his reminiscence inside the most effective way feasible, through making sure nobody else suffers the equal destiny. Yao Pan Ma's dying was a tragedy that never should have came about. Hate flourishes in silence. It's up to every of us to speak out, teach, and rise up for folks that are focused. What do you think desires to be completed to prevent crimes like this from taking place again? Share your mind in the remarks. And in case you observe this tale important, proportionate with others, the extra human beings know the more difficult it turns into to disregard.